Namaskar. Namo Namaha. Good evening and welcome to this session on Indology, hosted as a part of the India Global Week. This has been a year with a difference. Owing to the global pandemic, we've been required to be socially distant, but this has also given rise to new possibilities, with distances getting closer with the digital medium. It is a sheer honor that we have in our midst, present with us here today, renowned Indologist Professor Werner Menski, and the Director of the Nehru Centre London, Shri Amish Tripatiji. As a part of this Indology session, we are delighted to be hosting the Indology Award ceremony to confer the Distinguished Indologist Award 2018 conferred by the ICCR, the Indian Council for Cultural Relations. The ICCR was founded in 1950 by Maulana Abdul Kalam Azad, one of the foremost leaders of the Indian freedom struggle. He was also independent India's first education minister. Its objectives are to actively participate in the formulation and implementation of policies and programs pertaining to India's external cultural relations, to foster and strengthen cultural relations and mutual understanding between India and other countries, to promote cultural exchanges with other countries and people, and to develop relations with nations. We are pleased to invite virtually the Honorable President of the ICCR, Dr. Vinay Sahasrabuddhe. Dr. Vinay Sahasrabuddhe is a nationalist social worker at heart, a researcher cum student of political science, a trainer in democracy by profession, and a parliamentarian by elevation. Dr. Sahasrabuddhe was appointed President of the ICCR in January 2018. As a Member of Parliament, Rajya Sabha, he represents the state of Maharashtra and is also the Chairman of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Education, Women, Children, Youth and Sports. I now request Dr. Sahasrabuddhe to please deliver the keynote address.
Namaste. The awardee today whom we are going to felicitate, Professor Werner Menski, noted Indologist, Srimati Gayatri Issar Kumar, the High Commissioner of India to London, Shri Amish Tripatiji, our Director at the Nehru Centre of the ICCR, Professor Dr. Shreenand Bapat, other eminent personalities joining this virtual function, and friends. I am extremely happy to be associated with the presentation ceremony of the Distinguished Indologist Award for the year 2018 by the Indian Council for Cultural Relations, or the ICCR, due to the unavoidable challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic and the subsequent travel restrictions. It has become kind of mandatory for all of us to join this kind of a function virtually. This award is prestigious in itself, and it reflects upon the multidimensional philosophical and indological aspects of Indian civilization. It is a well-received recognition of the contributions by the eminent Indology scholars around the globe in the field of Indian art, culture, literature, civilization, and customs. We are happy to present this award for the year 2018 to Professor Werner Menski, an emeritus professor of School of Law and member of the Center for Jaina Studies, School of Oriental and African Studies at the University of London. I would like to congratulate Professor Menski for his resounding efforts in the dissemination and promotion of Indology. He has played an instrumental role and proved his intellectual might with his widespread research on Indology, having several publications like Hindu Law, Modern Indian Law, and several such other publications in his name. As a scholar of Hindu law, his holistic approach towards Indology in the postmodern conditions, I must mention here, has garnered appreciation and by renowned institutions. Indology as a discipline is as old as the history of India itself. Quest to know about one of the most ancient civilizations is, I think, as old as the civilization itself. Lately, Indological studies have been recognized globally. We at the ICCR recognize and appreciate this development and continuously work for its promotion. ICCR has conceptualized a plan to promote Indological study, and I'm proud to share this with our esteemed audience participating in this award function today. Our efforts to promote and popularize Indological studies aim at eradicating misunderstanding and disinformation about India, and in that way contribute towards enhancing the level of understanding about not only India, but the idea of India, Indian civilization, and Indian culture as well. At the same time, we are also all for contemporary Indology, because Indology need not mean only about talking about the ancient India, but we also have to talk about and spread awareness about all that is happening in modern India, in contemporary India, and therefore the idea of new Indology, I believe, is here to emerge. Indologists over generations have strived to delve deeper into India's rich history and civilization and promote Indological studies across the globe. Professor Menski's contribution in the study and promotion of Indology is an important step in this direction. I take this opportunity to commend Professor Menski and also wish him every success in his future projects in research in Indology. I am confident that his endeavors will lead to greater interest in not only study and research of classical Indology, but also study of, as I said, contemporary Indology or new Indology or maybe even modern Indology. With these words, I once again extend my hearty congratulations to Professor Werner Menski and wish him many more years of pursuit of understanding the Indian civilization. I would also like to extend my best wishes to all the panelists for their participation in the panel discussion organized alongside this award ceremony. Last but not the least, let me also extend my heartfelt greetings and also express my deep sense of gratitude towards the panel of esteemed Indologists who were a member of the jury when we decided about this award. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Vinay Sahasrabuddhe, for such positive and inspiring remarks. We'd now like to proceed to the next award ceremony. Before we proceed to the award ceremony, I'd like to introduce the award. The ICCR has instituted several awards which are conferred upon the foreign nationals for their contributions in different fields under its mandate of promoting India's cultural relations with other countries through various instrumentalities involving people-to-people contact. One such award includes the annual ICCR Distinguished Indologist Award. This was instituted in 2015 during the first World Indology Conference hosted by the then President of India, bringing prominent Indologists from world over to a single platform with Indian scholars to deliberate upon the scope of promoting Indian studies abroad. I now request Shri Amish Dupati ji, Director of the Nehru Centre, London, to please confer the Distinguished Indology Award, the Distinguished Indologist Award, to Professor Shri Werner Menski. The award comprises a citation, a medallion, and a prize money by check. Before we proceed, I'd just like to give a brief introduction to Professor Menski. Dr. Vinay Sahasrabuddhe has also given great feedback and a lot of information about Professor Menski. Professor Menski is Professor Emeritus of South Asian Laws at SOAS, University of London since 2014. He took an MA with distinction in Indology geography, and English from the University of Kiel in Germany in 1977 and became a lecturer in Sanskrit and Hindi. Recruited as a successor of Professor J.D.M. Derritt to teach Hindu marriage law at SOAS, he completed a PhD in Hindu law titled Role and Ritual in the Hindu Marriage from SOAS at the University of London in 1984. He developed an extensive teaching program at SOAS on Hindu law, Hinduism, South Asian laws and cultures, also in diaspora, and has written academic articles, mainly on South Asian laws, comparative law, and ethnic minority legal issues. His academic work combines in a unique manner Indological skills with legal expertise, arguing throughout for the continued relevance and transformative potential of Indic cultures, also in law-related discourses at the global level. We'd now once again like to congratulate Professor Werner Menski on receiving the prestigious Distinguished Indologist Award 2018. I now request Professor Minsky to kindly deliver his acceptance speech.
Dear Suhani, Ambassador Amish Dupati has left. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, former students all over the world, namaskar. I'm obviously honored and delighted to receive this ICCR award. And it took, as you heard, several attempts. So my motto for the speech is actually better late than never. And this is not criticism, but it's partly also a reflection of my own professional career as an Indologist. Because when I was 18, I didn't know Indology existed. I went for the safe route in Germany to study geography and English. I wanted to be a teacher. But 4 semesters into these studies, I suddenly applied at the last moment to teach German in England. I'd never been to the UK. And I ended up in Leicester in August 72. And in August 72, many people know, there were many refugees from Uganda. The city was crowded with Asians. On my first day of life in the UK, I learned that Gujarati, Punjabi, Bengali, Hindi, Urdu, all these languages are spoken in the UK. Well, better late than never. A few days later, quite soon, I began to learn Hindi from a wonderful couple, Subhash and Sharan Sachdev, our Bhaiya Babi, as we call them now. And they also taught me a lot about Indian culture. But my real training, solid training, occurred when I came back to Germany in 1973, because in Kiel, I didn't know there was a senior visiting professor, I think from the ICCR or some organization like that, who was teaching Hindi, Professor Jagdish Chandra Jain. And he and his daughter gave me a set of language tapes, which really are a unique method of drumming language skills into you. Main Hindi bolta hi rehta tha. So I learned to think in Hindi within days. Yeah? And it was just amazing. But again, better late than never. My Sanskrit guru, Professor Sprokov, he was an expert in Upanishads, and he realized very quickly that I would be a serious guy in Indology, and he allowed me to begin a PhD in Hindu law. You've already, not Hindu law really, Hindu customs, marriage customs, you talked about it already. And so he empowered me in a sense to go down that route. And some people said, wow, to finish this kind of project, you know, you would need to probably marry an Indian. But I'd never been to India. But then one day I was introduced to a wonderful woman in Baroda. She's here now somewhere in the room. And now she is Nilima Devi, MBE. And we discovered very soon that we both shared a vision. We wanted to both teach about India. So we got married very quickly, and of course duly registered the marriage. And then a few days later she was in Germany. And again, better late than never. But then in 1980, SOAS needed a young Indologist to teach Hindu law. And there weren't many people who could do this kind of job. So I was invited for interview, and Britain gained an Indologist who was now expected to become a lawyer. Now, some people have thought and said that I became neither, but this combination was actually very productive and evidently rewarding. Now, more than 40 years later, I look back at a career as an applied Indologist, a comparative lawyer with Sanskrit, integrating Indological knowledge into interdisciplinary legal studies. And this has really provided to thousands of students in SOAS and outside a unique educational experience, making them experience what it means to be a skilled cultural navigator. Now, as a legal pluralist with an Indological hat, I see that this India Global Forum talks a lot about environment and development. My most recent work actually links directly to this theme, discussing how, in the Anthropocene now, comparative environmental constitutionalism benefits from strong Indian voices, connecting past and present knowledge to devise future strategies. One realizes the relevance of ancient Indian perceptions of the environment. Now, the future of Indology is bright, in my view, not only because India is big and important, but also because Indians are nowadays all over the world and are everywhere. And even if they're not Indologists, I think the red threads of this amazingly plural subject and the knowledge base that continue to nurture real expertise on India and South Asia is really global now. So I thank the ICCR and Ambassador Dupati and you, Suhani. And finally, friends, colleagues, and former students, it is never too late to begin to learn about India. Thank you very much, and keep well, everyone.
Thank you, Professor Menski. That is such a beautiful message. It is never too late. And thank you for also drawing such valuable insight on the topic at hand. And now we move to the next segment. We now have a panel discussion on Indology, future directions. Along with Professor Menski, I'd now like to invite our esteemed panelists to join in. We have joining us virtually from India, the DG, ICCR, Shri Dinesh Patnaik ji. Shri Dinesh Patnaik ji is a career diplomat of the Indian Foreign Service with experience of over 25 years in a variety of interesting and challenging assignments, having served in varied Indian missions across the globe. Ambassador Patnaik holds a master's degree in business administration from the Indian Institute of Management, Kolkata, and master's degree in advanced international studies from the University of Vienna, and certificate in international studies from the Diplomatic Academy, Vienna. He has served as India's ambassador to Cambodia, the Kingdom of Morocco, Deputy High Commissioner of India to London, and Additional Secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs. We welcome you, sir. We also have in our midst erudite scholar, Professor Dr. Shreenand L. Bapat, the Registrar and Curator of the Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute, Pune. With an MA, PhD in Sanskrit, AIHC, and archaeology, Dr. Bapat has a specialization in manuscript and epigraphy. He heads the project on inscriptions of the Kadamba dynasty, teaches various topics of Indology at the Tilak Maharashtra Vidyapith. He is the managing editor, annals of the BORI, and guest lecturer in Tilak Maharashtra Vidyapith and Chanakya Mandal Parivar. He has 48 research papers, 8 edited books, and 2 written to his credit. Welcome, Dr. Bapat. Before we begin the discussion, just a few words that Indian society retains its vitality, and just like every other civilization, India is keen to recollect, rediscover, and interpret her own intellectual traditions from the past, which is a repository of cultural heritage and history, something that nurtures her identity, that finds its anchors in time and space. The future of Indology is joined by Indology's past and present. But is Indology entirely the past, or is it constantly evolving? What are the strategies for the future of Indology and Indological research? What is the applicability of Indology in future sciences? These are questions that we will address in today's discussion. Before we begin the discussion, I'd like to address my first question to Professor Menski here. Professor Menski, over the years, Indology has evolved from the post-colonial period to, as Dr. Vinay Sahasrabuddhe mentioned, the contemporary Indology. What, according to you, explains Indology best, and what, according to you, comes under the spectrum of Indology?
If you want me to sum it up in one sentence, to me, Indology is a seriously plurality of pluralities. It is immensely complex and diverse. There's so many Indologies. I discussed this topic with Professor Eleanor Nesbitt from Warwick University, who couldn't join us here, unfortunately. And we found that we wanted to convey that Indology looks like a treasure-filled palace with many rooms. Yeah? It deals with all domains of life. This palace is an Indian structure, but its ownership is also global because it involves so many others within India and also outside India. Now, current discussions about Swadeshi Indology reflect India's continuing nervousness about being dictated to by others. But hang on, colonial times are over. We are now post-colonial. So I think India ought to be a little more self-confident about this. And at the same time, virtually claiming ownership of Indology is a little difficult because it puts off foreign scholars, because we also want to share in this knowledge and we want to take part in this. And there's a long history of Indology, of Western Indology, which is very closely integrated with Indian types of Indology. Now, the real challenge still today is to figure out what these ancient texts actually mean, what they meant in their time, how they were understood later, and then maybe what sense we make of them today, because our views today, our drishtikon, as we say in Hindi, is very different from what it was before, quite clearly. Yeah? This is a huge challenge. And also, these ancient texts are guidelines. They are not the law. Yeah? So the underlying principles and basic values are what really counts, not some specific rules that apply completely out of context. Yeah? The Indologist challenge continues to be to figure out what all this means, wherever this Indologist may be. Despite hundreds of years of scholarship, we know only so much, and we still discover a lot of different nuances of understanding. In my experience, various forms of applied Indology need to be cultivated. And doing so, I strayed far from the classical model of Indology, but that precisely illustrates how important it is to do that, to connect Indology into all sorts of other disciplines, to make it relevant for a global audience. So I think this works both ways. But India, as the head of household virtually of this huge palace with its many riches, really has to speak the right language to the globe, to provide sophisticated global leadership in this field too. And this is going to be very hard work. And I actually look very much forward to what my co-panelists are going to tell us about this particular topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Minsky. A lot of valuable points raised over there. I'd like to address my next question to Dr. Shreenand L. Bapatji. Based on what Professor Menski spoke about, he spoke about Swadeshi Indology, he spoke about insiders, outsiders, the whole dispute that's arising. So to pave the way forward, what are your thoughts on Indian scholars who contribute to Indology, start a dialogue with their confreres in the global arena, in a manner which is true to the spirit and substance of India's rich, varied, and living cultural heritage and philosophy? So what are your thoughts on this East meets West?
First thing that I would like to, in fact, do is to congratulate Professor Menski for uh, the award that he has been conferred on. Uh, uh, I think that this particular stream of putting the East versus the West or the West versus the East is not proper in today's scenario, particularly when we are living as an independent country for about 70, 75 years now. So I think much has been done in Indological fields by, of course, the Westerners did a lot in the 19th century, particularly even earlier than that, and also in the 20th century. But the Indians have also added substantially to it. And so putting this as East against West is not I think proper in today's scenario. Now, today, you see, uh, particularly in the field of archaeology and all, it is the evidence that speaks. So, anyone who goes out of the evidence and tries to do something else actually cannot do much. Actually, he is exposed very easily. So, actually, sticking to the evidence and taking the material or studying the material completely, extensively, and also intensively is what is required, and for which I think the two methodologies, particularly the Indian methodology of learning things by heart, of preserving them orally and all, and the Western methodology of interpreting and translating, if both of them meet together, then I think a new horizon of Indology will open, and that is the need of the time. So that's what I would like to say.
No, very well summarized, sir. This is exactly what you said about finding a balance and creating this dialogue and finding a meeting ground between both will actually establish the balance. And speaking of balance now, I'd just like to address my next question to Ambassador Patnaik ji. The point of stagnation, especially for textual resources, comes when they are not put into application or when they're not put into practice. As an Indian classical dancer, I can say that the Natya Shastra and all such texts on Indian dance have been put into application by a lot of performing academicians like Dr. Padma Subramaniam, Dr. Sandhya Purecha, where they really work towards putting these texts into contemporary light, and that's how they've survived the test of time. So how would you suggest that we bridge this gap such that Indological research is made relevant and has contemporary value, and also relating it to what Professor Menski said about applied Indology?
No, thank you very much. And I wanted to start by congratulating Professor Minsky for the award. We gave it to him for 2018. We would have given the award in the last 2 years, but because of the pandemic, we've all been caught and we have to do it online. But like he said, better late than never. At least we have been able to give him the award, even though slightly late. But I would also want to support what Professor Menski said. Indology is like a huge chamber with many rooms, filled with treasures, which you have to find out. It's also like the blind man and the elephant. I mean, everybody is searching for what it means. What does India mean? Even today, we still don't know what does India mean. Because for me, Indology is the study of India. Whether it is classical Indology, modern Indology, talk about any Indology, it's a study of India. And everybody will study it from their own perspective. Whether you have a Westerner studying it, or an Indian studying it, or an Easterner studying it, everybody studies from their own perspective. And each one is correct in its own way. So there is no single way of studying India. And for me, the richness is in the fact that all of us can study India. Now, what is important is that we study India. And like Professor Menski said, if Indians do not get the right words, then it will turn away a lot of foreigners. I don't think so it is going to turn away anybody, whether you say the right or not. Everybody says what they have to say. Anybody who's interested in India will study India. If you're not interested in India, India doesn't matter, you will not study. I mean, how many people study Somalia, or how many people study Bolivia? I mean, just to make a point. The point is, you study a country because it interests you. You study a country because it is a treasure house of knowledge. You study a country because it has languages and culture and heritage which you think is fascinating and interesting. You study a country because there is something in it which you want to learn. So, as long as we focus on the fact that academicians and professors from all over the world are going to study these texts, study what was in the past, because you cannot have a study of the present without having a study of the past. You study the past, you study the present, you link it up. And here I come to your question. All the texts remain the same. The texts are not going to change. The Natya Sastra is not going to change because you're studying it now. It's an interpretation which changes. Because we are studying it from a perspective of today's time.
Absolutely.
If you study it from a perspective of 50 years back, you would have looked at it differently. So that perspective will keep on changing. That's the reason we need people to constantly study the arts and the applications. Today, technology gives us the ability to apply a lot of the nuances, a lot of the instructions, a lot of the things that was there then, which can be studied now and applied to it. So for me, there is no contradiction in whether Western, Eastern, modern, old. Everything encompasses in one thing. Like Professor Menski said, it's one large chamber with lots of small rooms. You study what you want, but the main thing is study India. That is Indology.
Lovely, sir. Very, very beautifully and very positively put. Study India. Dr. Vinay Sahasrabuddhe in his keynote address actually mentioned something about misrepresentations and misunderstandings and actually resolving those issues. I'd like to actually create a dialogue here between Dr. Bapat and Professor Menski. My first question to Professor Menski. So you've done so much work on Hinduism, on Hindu law, and on law in general. Of course, there must be a lot of difference in the way it is applied and the way it is interpreted in different, because law is, the spirit of law is in its interpretation. So would you like to address what Dr. Vinay Sahasrabuddhe mentioned in the beginning about misrepresentation and misunderstanding and the problems that can create? Because to gauge the future of Indology, it's important to understand what the fundamental issues are. So would you like to throw some light on that?
I think I would like to talk less about misrepresentations, but about the point that Ambassador Patnaik just made, namely the fact that we all interpret. We all come from different perspectives to these texts and to these sources, and so we are bound to make mistakes. We are bound to see things differently. Someone who's been trained as a Western lawyer will struggle to understand the nature of traditional Hindu law. Yeah? Someone who has been trained in a Shastric institution will have his own version of interpretation, and this is only normal. And I think to portray this as misinterpretation is probably not the right word. It's more, there are differences of perspectives, and we need to sit down and discuss this and iron it out in all these particular. And this is research. Let me give you an example. In my PhD thesis, I compared Rig Veda and Atharva Veda on marriage. And there is one verse where the little Sanskrit word is punaha. And in the same Atharva Vedic verse, that word is sanaha. It's not punaha. Now, that's not a mistake. You see, some German Indologist schoolmasters have said, oh, these Indians, they made mistakes. No way. This means a lot. But what does it mean? So if I check the existing books that we have, they tell us all sorts of stories. Now, I wouldn't call it misinterpretations, but they are, maybe deficient knowledge, maybe a perspective, that they haven't applied their mind widely enough, deeply enough, but there is an answer. So this is research, and this is the challenge that continues to be there for Indology.
Thank you, Professor Minsky. Dr. Bapat, would you like to respond to that?
In fact, I would like to put the other side of the same thing that Professor Menski told. Actually, I had a traditionally learned, teacher, Pandit Vaman Shastri Bhagavat, and who was actually very modern. So there was a problem about 4 or 5 sutras of Panini, because there was some problem because of which the interpretation was not so clear. And there was an opinion of some scholars that these sutras, these aphorisms are not that of Panini. They pertain to somebody else, or they are interpolated. Mm-hmm. And Bhagavad Gurji used to say that, see, Panditi has composed something like 4,000 sutras, and if there is a problem in four of the sutras, what is the problem? Okay, Panditi was a human being like you and me, and maybe there are some issues. We are not actually we are not actually. I mean, there is no ban on improving upon Pandini. We let us do that if possible. But there's no question of saying that these aphorisms do not pertain to Pandini. So this kind of reformation, and still he had a lot of respect for the tradition. He was a traditional man altogether for learning, and in other, I mean, in his life as such, he was a very modern man. So both these things can go together, and there are some certain illustrations of this kind. And now, actually, we are at the Bhandarkar Institute having a project. I mean, it is a branch of the project that has been undertaken by SOAS on Jaina prosopography. So that is a, you see, that's a project of finding out the historical personalities and the details of those historical personalities. And as such, it looks like a textual project or making an index or kind of encyclopedia of personalities. But but in a way, it is a history of India altogether and history of Indology altogether. So I think there are immense possibilities of doing things, and I very much agree with Professor Menski. That's it.
Thank you, Dr. Bapat. And yes, speaking of possibilities, I'd now like to address my next question to Ambassador Patnaik ji. So you've traveled widely, you've been to so many countries, you've served as ambassador in so many countries. What do you think is the way forward, and what do you think is the scope of Indology in all the various countries? And just looking at the whole spectrum, where do you see Indology heading?
Let me be very clear about one thing. Indology depends on India. If India is headed in the right direction, Indology will be headed in the right direction. As India grows, India becomes bigger, India becomes important, India takes its rightful place in the community of the world. It's the largest population, one of the largest economies in the world. It is doing very well, whether in IP or space or science and technology, or its culture is diverse, it's varied. As India grows, the interest in India will also keep on growing. So I have no fear of the future. Future of Indology is there. There may be youngsters who are not now interested in classical Indology. They will move to modern Indology. They will see systems in India. They will read about India differently. But neither does classical Indology go, nor does modern Indology go. People stopped learning Latin, but nobody stopped learning about classical Europe or classical. It still continues. People study this because these are important. We need to study it constantly. And I wanted to come back to what both Professor Bapat and Professor Minsky said about misinterpretation. And I agree with both of them. Because for me, at the end of the day, who is the audience? Who is going to decide whether it is interpreted correctly or misinterpreted? Whom are we trying to convince? Is it we are trying to convince academicians or non-academicians? Because you see, from a political perspective, I can say, okay, there is misinterpreted because I have to convince my people that what they are saying is wrong. But from an academic, there is no misinterpretation. Everything is an interpretation. That interpretation can be right or wrong, but for the person who's reading it has to judge from reading others. So the best way to avoid any misinterpretation is to have the maximum number of interpretations. If you have 20 scholars reading it with 20 different interpretations, the reader then can make a decision on whether he thinks which is the right interpretation. And if there is a text which can have 20 interpretations, imagine how wonderful that text is. You see, this is something people don't understand. If you have a single text which has a single meaning, it is so boring. But if you can have a text which can have 20 interpretations, it shows the depth of that text, depth of that language. So for me, I'm very, very confident Indology will go. Youngsters, like always, classical music is losing out, pop music is coming, classical Indology will go, pop Indology will come in. People will read more about study Saruk Khan in Germany than they will study Sanskrit. So this will keep on happening. But the whole point is India being studied or not? And what can we do to make the study of India easier? And one of the first things I always say is if you have to get others to study you, you have to study it yourself first.
Beautiful
You
thought.
cannot you cannot ask others to study something unless you are studying it yourself. And when you study and create a large amount, you see one of the weaknesses, but again Professor Bapat said, and I completely agree, we are good at oral traditions, uh, but the Europeans and others who have studied are very good at documentation. I saw it in Angkor Wat, I have seen it in EFO. Their documentation is brilliant. In fact, the only institute I have seen where the documentation is as brilliant as in the West is Bhandarkar, who have done a wonderful job, the Bhandarkar Institute of documenting things. It's wonderful. But we are not a traditionally documenting society. You look at our bureaucracy also. Half the time we can't find our own files where they are. But that's a different matter. I'm just digressing. But the whole idea is the whole idea is we need to learn from each other and do things together. And that is the
Absolutely.
future of it.
Thank you, sir. That's very positive, very hopeful. Now, just we're coming to the end of the session, so can I request Dr. Bapat to please give his concluding remarks, and then I'll give a minute to Professor Menski to wrap up this discussion. Thank you.
Yeah. See, there are one more point I would just like to add to Dr. Patnaik. See, we are going digital in everything. So going digital is very good and very important, and it also helps one study very quickly or understand things quickly. But still, an effort should be there that that the oral tradition and the way of actually studying the ancient shastras should be retained. And just like you mentioned about our work in documentation and all, the Bhandarkar Institute has started an initiative, a very small initiative, and we are actually in the process of reviving the Shastric learning that was prevalent or was being done in the Vasudev Shastri Abhyankar Pathshala in Pune. And maybe that will be another branch of our activity henceforth. So we shall be going into the traditional Shastras as well as the modern interpretation, translation, and also digitization of things. And maybe we'll put these things together, and maybe the results will be before the people in the next 10 years. So that's it. And let's look forward to doing something good in that field.
Fabulous, fabulous. So this is actually a very good amalgamation of the past, the present, and the future that you're doing at the Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute. And yes, so Professor Menski, any concluding remarks?
Well, very briefly, I think our discussion here has shown the richness of the field. So it's exactly confirming what we were saying here about Indology being a marvelous palace with many rooms and many riches. And there is obviously always the scope for disagreements and different perspectives. But Ambassador Patnaik, in particular, you spoke about the many possibilities of meanings of any particular element that we are studying. This is so very obvious and familiar and so important. Just imagine dharma. How do we translate dharma? How many things can this one single word mean? Yeah, so Sanskrit is polyphonic in so many ways. It's a beautiful language. And these ancients, they knew their language. We struggle to understand it now.
Absolutely.
That's the problem we have.
That's it, yes.
Yeah?
Thank you, Professor Menski. And thank you once again to Dr. Bapat, to the DG ICCR, Ambassador Patnaik ji. Thank you so much for gracing this discussion.
We are also honored to be here with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Namo Namaha. I'd now like to invite the Director of the Nehru Centre, London, Shri Amish Tripathi ji, to please deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you. I'm back like a bad penny. First, of course, I would like to thank the President ICCR, Vinay Sahasrabuddhe ji, for his wonderful words of wisdom at the beginning of this program, setting the agenda. I would, of course, like to honor and thank Professor Minsky once again. Thank you so much, sir, for gracing this platform, gracing this occasion. And thank you even more for the wonderful work that you've done for the culture of Mother India. All of us Indians are deeply grateful to you and will always be. Thank you so much, sir. I would like to thank Ambassador Dinesh Patnaik ji, the Director General of ICCR, for participating in this panel discussion and giving us his words of wisdom. I would like to thank Professor Shreenand Bapat ji from Bhandarkar Institute. Thank you, sir. And Bhandarkar Institute has been a wonderful repository of our sacred heritage. Delighted to have someone from that platform gracing this stage. I would like to thank Indian Global Forum for providing us this stage indeed and allowing us to present this very important award to Professor Minsky. Thank you so much for and all of you, the audience, for joining us on this very, very important occasion and giving us your time and your blessings. Thank you.
Thank you, Amish ji. It's mandatory to state that Amish ji is a diplomat, author, and columnist himself. He's been listed among the 50 most powerful Indians by India Today magazine in 2019 and ranked among the Forbes India top 100 most influential celebrities in India. Amish ji has written 7 books till date, which have sold over 5 million copies. So we're honored to have you here, and thank you, sir. Now, I request Amish ji and Professor Menski to kindly take your seats. We're now moving to the next segment, the cultural program.
Thank you.
Nrityam Samskriti Samvardhanam. Dance preserves culture, and therefore it is befitting that we have this beautiful cultural program to honor Professor Menski and in honor of this evening. Our first presentation is by Maitreyi Pahari and her team. Maitreyi's fascination for the arts, especially the traditional forms of music and dance, took her to the deep interiors of rural Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa in search of her objective, the preservation, promotion, and propagation of the traditional culture of rural India. Choreography was her ultimate ambition, and for a better understanding of this, she found it necessary to learn a classical form of dance. She joined Kathak Kendra in Delhi under the tutelage of Pandit Birju Maharaj ji as a recipient of the National Scholarship. She is also a graduate of Rabindra Bharati University, Kolkata, majoring in Manipuri dance, for which she was awarded a gold medal. Maitreyi was presented the Exceptional Women of Excellence Award by the Women Economic Forum in 2019. We will now view Maya. A brief note on Maya. Under the influence of the 3 gunas, the soul is misled by matter and subsequently entangled and entrapped. This tendency is termed as Maya, or illusion. The production envisages a very elaborate technique to incorporate Kathak with its crisp linear movements, lightning pirouettes, and fast footwork based on elaborate rhythmic patterns and Mayurbhanj Chhau, with its subtle swivel of hips and delicate deflection of legs and shoulders. The Mayurbhanj Chhau of Orissa is famous for its emphasis on leaps and jumps, leg extensions, and upper body inflexions. This is a very vigorous dance form. Choreography by Maitreyi Pahari, music Sharat Chandra Srivastav, lights Gautam Bhattacharya, and dancers Shailaja Nalvade, Shilpa Verma, Meera Rawat, Anusua Mazumdar, Surashri Bhattacharya, Ritushri Chaudhary, Payal Malik, Rajesh Sai Babu, Rakesh Sai Babu, Nikhil Lal, Amit Haldar, and Sunil Mehra. This will be followed by a dance presentation in Odissi by Devaki Thomas and Shreenand Patnaik, who have danced together for the last 8 years as Odissi students of Urbi Basu, a disciple of Guru Kelucharan Mahapatra and Guru Srimati Paushali Mukherjee ji. They have performed across the UK at Alchemy South Bank, Divine Dancing at Watford Palace Theatre, Raja Festival, and many more. They have a synergy and chemistry when working together and greatly enjoy collaborating with choreography. Devki is a multidisciplinary artist performing internationally for over 40 years, and Shreenand is an accomplished dancer and an A-level student. They will be presenting Manmohini, Odissi Dance Explorations. They've created these 2 dances for the Nehru Center called Mahishasura Mardini Stotram and Step Drum Rhythm, exploring rhythms of the dance with Devki on the Spanish cajon and Shreenand dancing. We now witness a scintillating 2-part cultural program. Thank you.